The Success in South Florida podcast is brought to you by the team at Rossen Law Firm. If you need DUI or criminal defense representation, call the Rossen Law Firm at 754-206-6200 or check the description of today's episode for more contact information. The Rossen Law Firm, helping good people when bad things happen so they can achieve their best futures.
Welcome back to another episode of Success in South Florida. I'm your host, Adam Rossen, and on the podcast today we have Eduardo Ayala. Eduardo, welcome. You are, you know what? I'm going to let you introduce yourself. We'll do that today. So go right ahead.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody listening. My name is Eduardo Ayala. I'm an attorney here in South Florida. I am the founder and owner of a law firm called Ayala Law PA, and been practicing for 13 years here in Coral Gables, Florida, Miami, and I'm happy to be here with Adam.
Perfect. Yes. So I know, we've recently been able to connect and meet, and I love the big things that you're doing down there in your field and everything. But before we really talk about that, let's just talk about you as a person. Where did you grow up and how did you come to South Florida? And really, what do you think were some of the seminal moments in your life, maybe teenage years, that helped kind of shape you and shaped your career?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Lima, Peru. I am an immigrant, but I'm not like your typical immigrant that, came here when he was a child or something. I came here as a 25-year-old, like your regular economic migrant, so to speak. I had no job back home, and I decided to take a chance on the U.S. And I couldn't be happier of having taken that step. Before immigrating to the U.S. at 25 in 2002, in my former life, I was a priest or a religious person, so to speak. So I spent 7 years or 7.5 years in a seminar in a community where I was celibate, where I had a superior obedience. So and that was from 16 to 25. So from early on, that's all I lived. I was a very religious person, not priest exactly, but sometimes saying I was like a priest is what simplifies it the best and people understand the most, but more like a brother type of guy. And I don't know if you know maybe the Opus Dei, one of those communities. And
well, I did. I graduated from Chaminade Madonna in Hollywood, and it was a Catholic and Marianist school, and we had brothers there. So
just like that. In fact, the Marianists were one of the not founders, but the community where I was part of was inspired on the Marianists.
Oh, okay.
So same lifestyle, brotherhood, some priests, but I was part of the brotherhood, and I didn't do mass or those types of liturgical things. But I was celibate. I lived in a community before I immigrated. That was my life, literally.
Wow.
And yeah.
So that's an incredible story. So let's start with that. So here you are growing up in Peru and at 16 years old. So what led you into that life?
So in Peru, around 16 years old is when you're in your last year of high school. So we only do 11 years as opposed to 12. So at 16, I was in my last year. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I've always been a curious person, but at that age, I didn't like anything. So I was introduced to these young guys from this community who taught me philosophy, then they taught me theology, then they linked that to the meaning of life, to what's your purpose, your vocation, God, and that really provided some content to a young person that really didn't know what to do with his life. So it provided some sort of like a meaningful path that I thought I was going to follow for the rest of my life. And it turns out that I didn't. But when you asked me before about, key moments that may have been important in what I am today as a person, definitely that, I don't come from money. My family is at best medium class or even lower in Peru, which is a poor country. And these people provided me with an education, a very solid education, basically. I attribute whatever success I have right now as a litigator, as an attorney, my logical and philosophical foundations to that formation that they gave me. So that's definitely key, even if I didn't end up,
Right.
being.
Well, I'm sure it requires a lot of discipline as well, which I know, discipline is required for anybody who's successful or having a high performance career. So, and did you say you were living in the monastery?
Yeah. So once I turned 18, so before I was like sort of like outside living at my parents, and as soon as I turned 18, I was admitted to a sort of like a seminary type of training period for 3 years. And in that 3 years, it's exactly what you're saying. It was it was a very, military style formation education. Like the first year was physical. We would run marathons, swim at 3 a.m. in the morning in the winter Peru is in the coast. Lima, my city, is in the coast, so in the ocean. Was a physical training. The second year and the third year was intense on studying. We studied Latin, Greek, philosophy, Aquinas, and St. Augustine, the classics, you name it. So we study like crazy. I mean, one of the hardest trainings intellectually that I've had, and I was like 19, 20.
It's
So
fascinating.
in very important times, I was, submitted to rigorous training. I think that's important. That has paid off later.
Right.
So
And
yeah.
so how many were there of you in your cohort? I mean, was this a big monastery, a big group, small group?
Back then, there were a lot, around 300 with me, the ones that were in the novices, I guess. We were around 30 of us. Yeah,
Okay. So yeah, it truly is like a brotherhood.
it
Um,
is. It is. I still have
and
friends from there.
oh,
Yeah.
that's incredible. And so, I mean, that to me is so different than the norm in America of what we see of the path to become an attorney. One of the amazing things about becoming, going to law school and becoming an attorney is that you don't need a specific track. You don't have to do a pre-law track. There were people in my law school that were, that were theater majors and there were art history majors, but because they studied something that they loved, but they wanted to be a lawyer. And it's the beauty of it. There really are no prerequisites besides getting good grades and taking the LSAT and getting a good score, unlike medicine or engineering or certain other things. So, but we don't really see too many people come from the religious world into law,
No.
and especially that level. So that's really an incredible story. And so you were in it for quite some time. And what happened? I mean, it had to be more than just, some temporary struggles. Like, you're 24, 25 years old. You're not a kid, right? You're an adult. You've lived here in that monastery for, a few years. And so what was that process first of getting out and then coming to America?
So, I mean, it was number one, rough. I can tell you that. It was rough for many reasons. First, around 24 years old, I was, no longer in that, training period. I was sent out to a city south of Lima, and then I was living there. I was successful within that world. I was in charge of a pastoral center with 400 people. I was a professor at a university that they own at 24 years of age. My students were my age, and
Wow.
but I started to feel lonely. I started to feel lonely at 24, 25. You start to think, then, I was celibate. That's not an easy life. And
Right. Yeah.
I like women before entering that life. So I ended up, getting involved with a woman, with my secretary. And literally soon after that, I go like, I'm not gonna live a double life. Yeah, this is not permitted here. I don't feel well here anymore. If I'm gonna change life completely, I'm 25, this is the time to do it. And at the same time, I was getting involved with this girl. Like literally 2 weeks after that, I got involved with this woman. I quit and I left.
Wow.
So yeah.
And I know, what is it? in America, is it the Baptists, where you can, you can marry, you don't have to be celibate. I know the Catholic priests and those, right? But I think there's definitely some other, or a deacon, or there's other things, where you don't have, you can kind of have the best of both worlds. But so I mean, to me, and I'm pretty ignorant with this. I don't know, but that's something that if I was there and I was a leader in that movement, and we were, we had to be celibate, that would have to continually being, I guess, marketed against, like continually basically reinforcing to everybody, hey, these are the rules, you can't do this, you can't. And to me, it seems like it would be a pretty shocking and different from the norm. So was there any blowback to you, um, friends, peers, just the institution of, religion? That, did you have any trouble with that?
I had a lot of trouble. They did not want to let me go. They had sort of like a mental psychological power over me. They've been all I had known since before being an adult, and they would tell me that I was gonna go to hell, that I was betraying God, and all of that. And I was thankful that I was mentally strong enough to even go against that, because I would feel really bad. I would feel like, yeah, what I want to do is to leave.
Right.
And I know that if I die, I may go to hell. Like, literally, I would think that right there, because I'm not following my vocation. So the blowback was hard, because this was a very radical community, a very conservative. And so I had to fight over that. They persisted a lot. And then I flew to my city, to Lima. And then, I was a professor at a university simply because they owned it, not because I had a degree or the qualifications in paper. So when I went back to my city, I had no job, no connections, no money, no education, no training, no experience.
And
I tried.
25 is not that old. It's still a situation where you are probably still young and inexperienced in life because you had spent so much time in a bubble, or, in the religious bubble. So that must have been very tough. How did you
It
deal
was
with
it
that?
was difficult. It was difficult. And then we are in a environment in Peru back then in 2002 with a massive economic crisis. There was Peru was one of the worst countries in South America. There was no jobs. When I left, I was like, you know what? I am a pretty competent guy. I should be able to find a job, right? I mean, how wrong I was. I couldn't find a single job. I interviewed, I mean, probably hundreds of times, salesmen, insurance, you know, the last thing that triggered everything where I said, you know what, I'm leaving the country. This is 6 months into me leaving the community, was that I applied for a job to be a bellboy, the guys that carry the bags, right, at a
Right.
hotel.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
and I got the job, right? And I got a job to carry suitcases in a 4 or 5 star hotels in Lima. And I was like, oh my God, I was the happiest guy in the world. Me having been a professor, a leader of people, having my secretary. So I was happy to really, carry suitcases. So I was supposed to start on a Monday. I did my, I was trying my uniform on Thursday or Friday before. On Friday, I get a call from the lady that my position had been canceled.
Yeah.
There were job cuts, my my job was gone. So even the one that I was accepted, it was cut, so no
Right.
more jobs. So I was like, I told my mom who had cancer, hey mom, look, there's nothing for me here. I had a tourist visa. It was about to expire. Nobody's going to renew me a visa to me, a 25-year-old. And I just decided to take my chances and came to the US.
Okay. I mean, and that must have been, well, must have been, was it scary? Because it doesn't seem like it was risky because you had nothing to lose, but was there still fear in that decision?
It was, I mean, not to brag, but I've always had I've always been, pretty fearless. I've never been guy that panics. But it was, yeah, I have fear. I was afraid. I was detained at the airport for 6 hours, because the guy, the Customs and Border Protection guy, thought that I wanted to immigrate, surprise, he and I had to tell him, no, I am just tourist, and I wasn't, right? So, and he detained me for 6 hours until I was like, you know what? Send me back. I don't want to be locked down here. When I told him to send me back, literally he let me go. And I entered the United States. And then I had $200 in my pocket, and then I had to take a taxi. This was in Orlando, and the taxi cab was $40. I was like shocked. How can a
Wow.
taxi cab back then? Think about it,
Right.
2002.
Yeah.
Taxi
20
cab was
years.
$40. That's insane. So,
Did you
so
have
and
any family or friends here?
nothing at all. So back then there was, I don't know if you remember, you're probably not old enough, but before the internet on the phones, you had to go to these internet cafes.
Right. I know. I remember. I didn't
You
really
remember
use
that?
them much, but I remember them around.
Well, but you're here, imagine in Peru, so the internet widespread came later probably. So we go to the internet
Right.
cafes, you will go to the Yahoo rooms or the Hotmail MSN rooms chat. So there I met a guy, Peruvian guy who was residing in Boca Raton. And I told him, I want to come to the US. I have no money. Can you help me out? And he told me he was gonna, host me until I find a job and I can pay him some rent. I did not know the guy. I just took my chances and came to the home of a
Oh,
stranger.
that's amazing. I mean, again, and risky, and
Very risky.
probably had a little bit of fear because what if this is somebody who was preying on you? What if it didn't work out?
It didn't work out.
No. Okay. All right. So how long did that take? Was it a day or two, or were we talking a
No,
few
it
months?
took 3 months. It took me longer than I expected to find a job. Nobody, I mean, people lie to you when you're back there. They tell you it's super easy, but it's not very easy to find a job when you don't have papers. So it took me like a month to find a job. Think about it. I was this guy who didn't know me well, a month to find a job, not paying him rent. So,
Right.
and then when I found a job, I started paying him. But, as it turns out, this guy was gay, and he liked me in ways that I didn't. And
Okay.
we share a room. And then think about it. I mean, this is something people don't think maybe, but I had no idea. I have never interacted with a gay person. I was 8 years in a bubble, right? In a
Right.
conservative religious bubble where, so I couldn't see anything until he literally said that to me and made advances. So I literally left the house running. you
So
know,
I mean, it literally sounds like a movie.
it's a horror
It
show.
really does. Yeah. So, well, and you have nobody, you have no friends, no family here.
Yeah.
It's such a big, leap of faith to come. So, I mean, it definitely sounds like the plot of a movie. And so eventually, um, you know, talk to us about landing on your feet and the decision to go to law school.
So fast forward a little bit, found jobs, still had no papers. Because I had no papers, I had no way to work legally. And believe it or not, the best way to be illegal here is to do business rather than work. So I purchased a small restaurant with all my savings of working 100 hours a week. I had a restaurant with a partner. The restaurant didn't go well. The crisis in 07, 08. And then I lost my restaurant, so I lost my savings. So I had to start over again then. But back then I had already married and I had gotten my first work permit. And the minute I got my work permit, I go like, I'm going back to school because that's what I've always liked. I've always liked education and I thought I was capable. So when I lost my restaurant, I took a job at a law firm, a PI law firm, scanning documents. I was scanning documents for $9 an hour. And it was one of the most boring jobs in the world. I would scan document, then I go to a little cubicle, just hit save as, and then put it in the file. I mean, that for
Yeah.
8 hours, 9 hours, and then at night I would work in a restaurant. But it was so boring that I would read the documents. I would read the subpoenas, I would read the motions, I would read all of that. And then I go like, this thing, I think I can do this thing.
not that hard, right?
It's not
Well,
that hard. And then I also knew the owner who has 70 employees, Ayala, house in Coco. I go like, the guy didn't look to me to be anything special, to be honest, right? I go like, this guy can do it, can probably do this thing too.
and
So
how old are you at this point?
at the time, I was 30, probably 30 years
Okay.
old
So
already.
about 5 years in the
20,
country.
29, 30, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
So I go like, okay, what does it take to go to law school? Let's do this, because I was so sick of being poor and of being broke, losing my business. I didn't want to start. I wanted something that when I obtained it, nobody can take it away from me. And I thought
Right.
that a law degree would be that, right? Doesn't matter that I'm poor, I would still have that degree, that education. So I started to research how long will it take me to go to law school. And I find out that I needed a bachelor's. I go like, oh my God, 7 years. I'm already 29. By the time I do this, it's gonna be a while. So what I did is, even though I had no degree in back home, I had taken some classes, some theology and philosophy classes. So I brought all that, validated it, and then I had a girlfriend that worked at FIU at the maintenance department as a secretary. I told her to find me a job there, because if I found a job there, they would pay half of my tuition.
Ah, that's great.
So I found a job as a helper of a locksmith in the locksmith department of FIU. So I went to the admissions office. I found out what I took, and long story short, with about a year and a half, considering my credits from Peru, I was able to get a bachelor's in a year and a half, and then just take the LSAT, take the TOEFL exam, because remember, English, I had to
Right.
show them that I spoke English, and then a whole bunch of other paperwork that I just had to do. And yeah, in 2008, I started law school. I was 31, and I was 34 when I graduated.
So, Eduardo, you make this sound so easy, and I know how difficult this is. And so I want everybody who's listening this to truly understand how incredible this is. When you come to the country, 24, 25 years old. Did you speak English at that point?
No,
Okay. You
no,
have
but I'll tell you my
the,
trick about that.
what's that?
I landed in Boca Raton, not Miami. They speak English there.
Yep.
And the best thing to do if you don't know English, what do?
Watch
You
the
date
TV.
American women.
Ah, okay. Okay.
That was intensive lessons. I
Right.
sort of, in 6 months, I was speaking English.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you had some good helpers and good motivation, right? That's good teachers and good motivation. That's all you need. But yeah, I mean, you're 25, you don't speak the language, you have nobody here at all. Run into a situation that's not what you think it is, with housing and benevolent person trying to take you in. And you're working all types of jobs. Nothing is beneath you. And just to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to do this, right? How many other people would have said no, would have said, oh, 7 years, I can't do anything, right? Or it's too hard, too much money, or this or that. And so the word, I just wrote down resiliency as you were talking. To me, that's really the word that came up, is that toughness, that grit, but just being resilient, I think, is a takeaway that our listeners can really have from this. As far as you and your story, because you probably have had many instances in your life where you could have chosen two paths, the easy path or the better path, and seems as though you consistently are choosing the better path, which is oftentimes more difficult.
I appreciate it, and I don't consider myself anything special, to be honest. So the thing about me is like, look, when I was working in Dunkin' Donuts, I wanted to be a manager of Dunkin' Donuts. When I was working in Publix, I wanted to be the manager of the deli. When I was decided, let's get in the legal field first, I started to say, let me see if I can be a paralegal. Like, to me, I've never been that guy that oh, since I was 12, I want to be an attorney and it's been my thing. No, actually kind of the opposite. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So it's being step by step. Right now, let's say I'm in this situation now. I have the firm. Like, what's next, right? I look at one step up. And, from one step up, once you achieve it, the next, and then all of a sudden, when you look in retrospect from, start to now, like, it looked like a huge, but it's been a combination of little steps. And yes, a lot of challenges. Like I said, maybe I should be more fearful, and some of the things I've done, I shouldn't have done.
Oh, it seems to me like it's working really well for you. I think too many people are held back by fear and don't push through it. Fear is okay, right? As long as so long as it doesn't, hamper your life, your dreams, your goals, and you can have it. You just have to push through it. And I think that's what maybe you just never even had it, but fear is not a bad thing. It's just, you got to, fight through it.
And I like now, I mean, better, you have a firm and an awesome brand. I also like to sell that in our brand. And I just had a mediation recently where, what our client says about us and about me is that, Eduardo fights, we fight for them. It's in our DNA, it's the right cause. If we team up with our clients, we go like, we're gonna fight for you. And I think, at the end of the day, the brand is a little bit you, and that's, I guess, who I am. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And so let's talk about this. So you started your firm. Did you start your firm right out of law school, or did you work somewhere else first?
So the way that worked was, I graduated, I was 34. There was an economic recession. There were no jobs. So I took a job reviewing documents at a medium-sized firm. I worked there for 3-4 months, and then they gave me an associate position. I stayed there for a year, and then I didn't like it, and I went 3 months to work to a insurance defense firm. I hated it, and I had to fight with my boss, and he fired me. So I practiced for a year and 3 months after law school. And then remember, here's where age plays a factor. So I was 34 already. At 34, you're not the same as you're 25,
Right.
You don't like to take a lot of crap from people. So I go like, hey, maybe, working for someone is not the best fit for me.
Right.
So let me see what I can do. So I started a firm. I had no business plan. I had nothing. I mean, I didn't know anything. And I had a little studio in Lejeune Road. And from my studio, I bought a printer, incorporated something, and I started doing immigration cases, which I didn't know well. I had done the immigration clinic in FIU, but I started doing immigration cases, which were the most accessible to me at the time, right? Just to meet people. And I'm an immigrant, so that's a good sale. I'm an immigrant. I want to help immigrants. So I started doing that. And but then, the practice took me to litigation cases. Litigation cases started to come up, and we naturally tended towards that. That's something that was a better fit for me. The confrontational process, the fight, and the resilience that you have to have in litigation was more of a better fit for me as an individual, as a lawyer, as a practitioner.
Right. And so, again, we're talking about crossroads. Something happens, not going well. Well, what do? There's so many people that just would go somewhere else, or just, be down on themselves. And you just said, all right, I'm just going to start it. Which is incredible. Again, it shows to me, there's a common theme here of fearlessness, or pushing through fear, and resiliency. So I really love that. Is, here we are on the Success in South Florida podcast, talking about what makes people successful. And we've done, I don't know, 25 episodes, 30 episodes, and everybody's different, but there's definitely some common themes as I've been able to interview some amazing people in South Florida. So everybody listening to this, I really want you to take this stuff to heart. Now, Eduardo, I think this is a great time for us to take our commercial break. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a very quick commercial break. We're going to come back, and then I want to talk all about the firm now, all the big things you're doing. I want to talk about those evil tow companies, and some of just the really cool stuff you're doing in litigation. And of course, I know you have big plans for the future. So we'll be right back.
When something bad happens, who do you turn to? In South Florida, the answer is the Rossen Law Firm. criminal and DUI defense for when bad things happen to good people. The Rossen Law Firm is a team of 8 criminal defense attorneys, including 2 board-certified criminal trial experts. They also have federal and white-collar divisions in the practice. To learn more about the team and how they can help you, connect on Facebook and Instagram at Rossen Law Firm. You'll also find helpful and entertaining videos on Rossen Law Firm YouTube channel. Just check this episode's description for all the ways you can connect.
And we're back on the Success in South Florida podcast with Eduardo Ayala. Eduardo, so, we've been learning a ton about you. Now, you have the firm, you started in immigration, just kind of get out and pay the bills. And here you are now talking about transitioning more into some business and litigation. Well, let's talk, where's the firm today? It's 2024. So what does your firm look like now in size, in services, and how many attorneys, and, what are the kind of things that you're doing to help the community?
Yeah, so we about 5 years ago we became primarily a litigation firm, even though we still do a very, very small amount of immigration cases, but I say 90%. And I didn't know what I was doing for a long time. I was your typical solo practitioner with a secretary, then a secretary and a paralegal, then a secretary, paralegal, and an associate. I was your typical, I'd say, average practitioner, very small operation. 5 years ago, we decided, what, we're going to be a litigation firm. That's going to be our DNA. As you know, and most listeners know, having an identity is super important in business, a focus. And 3 years ago, I decided not only to get serious in terms of, okay, we're going to do litigation, we're going to be litigators, but I want to get more serious about business. So 3 years ago or something like that, I decided to start reading about business. I was, I was your typical, and this is wrong, by the way, I was your typical lawyer that thought that if I'm a good lawyer, my firm is going to be great. Like I conflated those two, and they're two completely different things. So I started to get serious about business. About 3 years ago, I read a ton of things about business, of processes, systems, and started implementing it. And since then, we've grown to we are 4 lawyers. We're 13 people in total. We own a pretty nice office building, a 5-story building. And we are expanding primarily with our litigation brand, commercial litigation, civil litigation, consumer litigation, some class action litigation, which is also generally consumer related. And we have a business plan. Our plan is to expand the brand probably to other places. Down here in Miami and in our office, we want to have around 15 to 20 lawyers. We can fit in our building up to 40 people probably. And then from there, go to other cities. It's a 5-year plan. We're pretty ambitious. My firm has grown through 10 years, like little by little.
Right.
And right now that we are very more solid into what we sell and what our identity and brand is, we're hitting pretty ambitiously in the expansion plan, and we are hoping to be literally triple in size probably in the next 5 years or less.
And so it's not bad for somebody who came here with $200 in their pocket, right? Who basically said, you know what, send me home, right? I mean, that's the American dream. Okay. And I love the fact that you're now intentional about this and that you want to continue to grow. And I always believe companies, whether it's anything, but companies or law firms, they take on the personality of their leader. So I know, you like to fight and to litigate, right? And and that was exciting to you. So of course, that's the firm and the personality that you're going to have and the attorneys that you're going to have. Just like me with the Rossen Law Firm, we we love litigation as well. We fight as well, but we're also very nurturing and we take care of our clients and we have a huge focus on mental health and substance abuse. And it's just those things, the businesses kind of take on the personalities of the leaders. And I think that's great. That's what makes companies unique and what makes a great culture, because like attracts like. And while we want to have diversity among backgrounds and experiences, I always believe that the core values of the firm, we want everybody the same, whatever those core values are. But you want people to have those same core values, so that way it's a happy work environment for everybody. Because I'm sure if I was not a litigator, right, and I came to work for your firm, I probably wouldn't enjoy myself. But and you guys probably wouldn't enjoy me if I wasn't a litigator. Obviously I am, but right, if I just wanted to do document review or do wills and trusts and not really, just push paper. And so that's why when you get intentional about who you are, what's your firm's culture, and then you look for people who fit and believe and truly live that culture and core values on their own, then it makes for a much better, much more cohesive work environment for everybody. And then you can grow exponentially fast.
And I've been blessed. I've been blessed because my team is just fantastic. They're amazing, amazing. The core team, some of them are with me for 7 years, 6 years, 5 years for a while now, and they're in for the long run. They love the firm. They buy into the brand, our values, and yeah, and part of that is that we, you've said it before, and I'm the founder. Unfortunately, my identity as a human, it's in the firm, in the firm's DNA, in the brand, and they buy into that. And part of that is it's really a love for the law. I personally love the law. I love the trade and using it for good, using our,
Right.
the rules and the intellectual skills required to understand the law, to get a whole bunch of information together and put it organized in a persuasive fashion to some other human. Like, I love that trade and using it for good. We try to, for the most part, pick causes that, I mean, not that they're right or wrong, but that we ourselves in our heart buy into. Okay, we like your story. We're gonna go for it. Could be wrong. I mean, but we partner with people and advocate. So we're advocates, and that's something that's important for our brand. And the team buys into it, and it's great. It's great. Without them, this firm wouldn't be anything.
Right. Yeah. And so in your legal career, have you had any mentors or just people who have guided you along the way, or has it just been kind of self-study and figuring it out on your own?
So initially, Juan Carlos Gomez, my immigration law professor, he helped me out a bit, with his limitations because he's an extremely busy man, a professor, the head of the clinic, his own practice. So he taught me a little bit about immigration. But for the most part, I am in general, I don't say this with pride because it may not be good, but I like to self-learn. Like I really don't like people teaching me. I like to read it myself. Like that's the kind of guy I am.
Okay.
Okay, I need to I mean class actions. I discovered it at one point 7 years ago, and then I bought a bunch of books about. I literally like 7 books about class action, and I just read them. For me, reading has always been the most efficient way to absorb knowledge. So I've been kind of self-taught, towing litigation, literally. I mentioned that to you the other day. That's an area nobody wants, because who wants to deal with towing companies? They're nasty and they're corrupt, and then the clients don't pay for these cases. So we took
Right.
on them and we literally developed that field of law. We're like, nobody knows more than that and than we do.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about that. So, I find it fascinating, right? Because everybody has their own way of learning. Everybody, has their own style. So you like, maybe this is something that was developed with you being in the monastery, right? Where it's more of silence, solitude, quiet reflection, self-study rather than group learning or one-on-one even. And then to develop this niche of law. Nobody likes tow companies. Everybody hates tow companies. It's been a long time since my car was towed. But I remember college days where I think it was towed 2 or 3 times at University of Florida, and it's a racket. I mean, they're just so corrupt, and they steal people's money, and
Disgusting.
and I think to have you fight for the little guy, right, the common folk, um, is fantastic. So tell us about that, how you got into this and what you do. Because when you told me, I was lighting up, so excited that somebody's sticking it to them.
So there was this when I mean, it goes back to maybe 2014 when I started the practice. There was this guy in Tampa. He's a friend of mine now. We've seen both of our firms grow together, and he sort of got into it. He's also a PI guy, personal injury, and he had a hearing. He's in Tampa. He had a hearing here. So when I had no work, when I quit was fired from my job, I would go to Craigslist.com to find coverage counsel jobs. So he essentially pay me, I don't know, $75 to cover a hearing.
Okay.
And that was my first tow case. After that, we had a couple of cases here and there, but then when the pandemic hit, I had no work. So, I just started suing towing companies because there's nothing easier to find clients when you tell someone, hey, hire me, you don't have to pay me anything, right? That's the
Right.
that's the easiest sell in the world against a towing company that tow their car and they're mad. They're mad because it's a bad experience all the time. Nobody's ever cool. No, they're all when they tow your car, everybody's mad.
Of
So
course. And so you're taking these cases on contingency,
yeah.
right? Okay. Okay. And so did you find some niches in the law where you'd be able to successfully, represent people against them?
Yeah, so the Florida, the towing statute 71507 gives you attorney's fees. So we would sue them and then go for our attorney's fees. And then, but there was, I think, 2 DCA decisions on the topic, all ones. Now there is 6, and I've been involved in all the 4. And
So you're making the law here.
so we're making the law, yeah.
It's
And
exciting.
we're literally experts on the field. There's this company, I mean, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Knight Swift. They're a big transportation company, Fortune 500 company. They hire us to recover their trailers because towing companies, they tow their trailers and then they sell them. And then the towing companies, so they say they tow your vehicle, right? And then they send notices of lien. Hey, you don't pay the invoices, notices of lien, then they get a lien on the vehicle for overcharged invoices for, let's say, $3,000, right? And then nobody shows up because big company, no mess, whatever. So they schedule a public sale and they sell the vehicle for $60,000 on a
Wow.
$3,000 invoice.
Wow.
Oh, no, let's try that. They said they take title to that vehicle on a sham public sale, and then okay, we go like that's fine. Let's not even talk about the legality of the tow. Let's not even talk about that. Just give me 57. Take your 3,000 and give me 57. Right? That's
Right.
what we go on our demands, and they go like no. It's my trailer now. It's my vehicle. I'm entitled to the whole thing. And they don't want to give the money or the truck back. I just signed a case where the kid's vehicle was towed. Okay, fine, forget it. He was traveling, he was away, he didn't get the notices. Okay, that's fine. Give me the value back. You sold it, take your $3,000
Right.
invoice for
Right.
towing. Give me the rest back. They go, no, I'm lying. This kid sent his friend to this sham public sale. And the sham public sale was at 8 a.m. Okay, he came in at 8:09 a.m. and they wouldn't give him the vehicle. He didn't even want to pay the invoice. He says, "Okay, I'm gonna bid on the vehicle." They wouldn't let him bid, so it's a sham sale. And I sue a tow company that on the day they sold my client's car, they were selling 8 other vehicles. So they're running this underground shadow dealership corrupt operation, and they're getting away with murder. And I mean, I see how I get about this. They're
Yeah,
disgusting.
yeah, I feel the passion. So, and you've been successful at suing them, right?
You know, do be surprised. They fight me a lot. They fight me a lot, but at this point, we're developing the practice where when they know it's us,
They're
they
gonna
think it
settle.
twice, right?
Yeah,
Because they know we know it. They look us up, and we're experts on this field. Sometimes we're dealing with the same lawyers, right? So there's a guy who I sue his client before, and I go like, hey, look, Carlos, I'm about to file this. What do you want to do, right? So we're getting to that point
good,
where
good.
many years have built the practice, and
Well, what you need to do is find ways to market even more and better, because not only is this good for your business, but when you're truly helping people from these corrupt practices, I believe that you have an ethical duty and obligation to grow your law firm and to have more people know about you, so that way you can help them. Because I'm sure people have these situations and they call other lawyers, and other lawyers don't know what they're doing, so they turn them away. Or if they take the case, they're doing a very poor job because they're not real experts in this area. So, I love that you're sticking it to these people in exposing shady and corrupt practices. And I want you to grow your firm, and especially this niche of that firm, because the people of South Florida need you, Eduardo. You're like the hero. You're the white knight coming in to help them from the evil tow companies.
that's the plan. That's the plan. But the first 3 years, when we didn't know the area as well, when we were in developing, when we didn't have decisions, when we didn't have money to finance, I mean, you should see, there's something that I admire about towing companies, and you'll be surprised what I'm gonna say. They're united. They're like,
Okay.
oh my God, these guys are all in one, and they have a lobby. They actually changed the statute. They got good lobbyists. They got funds that they use to finance litigation. They fight hard. They fight hard. So we some cases we've had like 4 years litigating against a towing company on a $2,000-3,000 claim. So and we had to
Right.
finance that.
Because
So
they're
now
going to
we
try
got
to
that
grind you down.
correct. So now that the practice is expanding, the goal is to be able to finance more of these cases, and I mean, maybe you've heard this from some of the maybe PI guys. Contingency practices can be challenging. They can be
Right.
challenging financially.
Cash flow. What happens if you lose?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just can come back 2 years, 3 years, and you come up as zero. But
Right.
even worse, sometimes they want fees from your client, or fees from us. So I mean, 57 105, whatever, and you have to defend those. So yeah, so it has its challenge, but yeah, the goal is to do more of this, because I like it a lot. I love business litigation, commercial litigation, but consumer litigation is also very exciting.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So, Eduardo, what advice would you have for somebody who's, maybe young and, like similar to you, maybe has some struggles and, or has a little bit of fear, and just what advice would you have for somebody to kind of, to be successful, to up level their lives or go for it, whatever that may be for them?
Um, if you're a lawyer, I recommend you to read my book. It's called How I Did It, where I write the process of how I create a firm. It's in Amazon. And but if you're just anyone, I would recommend that actually don't be like me. So find a focus, find one thing. I've been all over the place. I've been religious, philosophy, business, law. I mean, I find something early on. The earliest you find it, the better you're gonna do in life. And set ambitious goal and then break them apart in little tiny goals, just steps to that you're gonna get there. So and don't let fear paralyze you. My philosophy of life and everything. I face a lot of threats from big firms, and my philosophy of life is always to ask myself, okay, I got this threat, I got this situation. Okay, what's the worst that can happen, right? The
Right.
answer, the answer is always, or the answer is never someone's going to die. So the answer is never that.
Right.
So the worst that can happen is, I mean, I go broke or somebody loses money. So it's just, you know, so
Well,
sometimes,
and the worst that can happen that's in your head is never what actually happens. Right.
well, I have
Never.
this other phrase that I like to live by, which is 95% of the things we're afraid never happen, right?
Yeah.
So it's inefficient to be afraid because more, I mean, more often than not, the things you're fearing are just wasting energy inside yourself. They may not happen.
Yeah, I learned a few, maybe 7, 8 years ago, and it stuck with me. There's a few different acronyms for fear, but the one I like is false events appearing real. And that stuck with me. And that's always something that when I have decisions to make and a little bit of fear creeps in, I'm just like, all right, Adam, it's false events appearing real. It's not going to happen. As long as the decision-making process is sound and it's well thought out, and go for it. Because the end of the day, many, many, many years from now, when people are at their end, it's usually there's the things that they regret, not the things that they're focusing on that they did and went for. And so I think that's, a very powerful lesson for everybody. So Eduardo, I didn't even know you wrote the book. I don't think we talked about that. So I'm gonna check that out. Maybe I can get a signed copy from you. That'd be real nice. A little present if you want, if you have
Sure,
some extras.
absolutely. My pleasure.
I love getting signed copies of books from the authors. It's, I think that's always very special to me. But where can people find you if they want to, if obviously if they need an attorney, if they want to, any type of the kind of cases you do, or if they just want to talk, I'm sure, I know you'd be willing to help out anybody. So where's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I always love, mentoring anyone. I like to do it, Best way is definitely via email. My email is my name, Eduardo at ayalalawpa.com. So, and I leave in my email and I respond to my email. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, set up a meeting, a Zoom, come to my office and see me, I'll be happy to, in any way I can help to anyone with interest in, the litigation, practice, business, entrepreneurship, or even if they have just interest to go to law school and things like that. Very happy to help.
Fantastic. All right, great. So Eduardo, thank you so much. Really appreciate you having you here. And I know we'll definitely be talking soon. Take care.
Thank you, Adam.